few minutes here.
Let's get right to our panel. Joining us now is political strategist Angela Rye, principal of Impact Strategies, and MSNBC contributor Joy Reid, who's managing editor of thegrio.com. Joy, the search is on for the Republican Party's next top model, and we have a new poll out today giving us an early look at the party's 2016 favourites, and with hypothetical matchups against Hillary Clinton. So we have Christie, who loses by the smallest margin, 45 to 37. Mrs. Clinton's lead grows even larger when you put her up against the great Paul Ryan, who would lose 50 to 38. And then there's Marco Rubio, who in this matchup would fall short by a margin of 50% to 34. So I guess the moral of the lesson is the more popular you are at CPAC, the less popular you are with voters at large.
Yeah, and I think the other lesson is for Marco Rubio. Just mentioning a lot of hip-hop artists doesn't really get you anywhere in a matchup with Hillary Clinton. He might want to try another strategy.
What is it with that?
I can't. I don't get it. Just saying a lot of hip-hop artists' names, not the best strategy.
What do you think's behind that, though?
I think he's trying to be cool, and I think he thinks the way to be cool. And before he kept...
It's like watching your granddad at a disco.
Exactly. And before he kept on dating himself by only mentioning hip-hop artists from the 90s.
Yes.
At least now he's mentioning like modern day or artists, but it's annoying. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. Angela, we mentioned the big gathering at CPAC next week. One of the speakers who will be going in there with a lot of steam at his back is Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Perhaps that's why Chris Cillizza writes in the Washington Post today that, quotes, "No one should underestimate Rand Paul's ability to have a major impact on the 2016 race." Do you think that's still true, Angela, though, after tongue-lashing he just received from John McCain and Lindsey Graham?
It was quite a lashing, Martin. I don't think that it's true that he has the wind at his sails. I do think he is still very desperate for attention. We saw a little bit of this when Secretary Clinton at the time was testifying before the Senate hearing, and Rand Paul told her that if he had been the President of the United States, he would have fired her. And now his latest grandstanding is this filibuster stunt last night where, I said repeatedly, even on Twitter, Martin, that, listen, John Brennan is still going to be confirmed as the CIA director, and so what is the point of this really?
Angela, Rand Paul said John Brennan was going to be confirmed.
He sure did. He sure did.
That's true. Joy, the poll that's out today doesn't include a theoretical matchup between Mrs. Clinton and Jeb Bush, but there is an earlier poll that does. It shows Mrs. Clinton again would beat the former Florida governor, but only by 49% to 43%. But after Mr. Bush's performance on immigration this week, that may, of course, widen. But also, isn't the biggest problem here 4 letters, B-U-S-H?
Yeah, and I think that my theory has always been Jeb Bush really wants to be president. I think he has been determined to run. He's been waiting for the right year and for sort of the sting of the Bush name to wear off. It's not clear that it's even worn off with Republicans, because part of the reason Rand Paul is so popular, he represents really in a lot of ways the anti-Bush wing of the Republican Party, the party that's weary of war, that's very wary of the idea of this interventionism, this sort of neocon idea of going into other countries and turning them into democracies. And he represents the wing of the party that was willing to cut defense if it meant cutting spending, because that was their most important thing, and this hardcore social conservative wing. In a lot of ways, Rand Paul represents the sort of renegade piece of the party that is growing and that is still strong, whereas the Jeb Bush wing of the party is more establishment and is having a really hard time controlling the Rand Paul people. So I would to see a primary between these two guys. I think Rand Paul versus Jeb Bush, epic primary battle, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, wow. Angela, let's switch now from the ghost of elections future to the ghosts of elections past. We've had yet more news of Mitt Romney this week, and it seems as though his commitment to public service is so impressive, he's going back to private sector and taking a job at his son's private equity firm. So can you explain that? Because I thought he loved the country and wanted to serve.
Well, maybe he got a little frustrated with his inability now to be in a position to fire Big Bird, so he's back to just firing the rest of the 47%, Martin.
Yeah, but this is a guy who already has assets, Angela, of over $300 million. He doesn't even need to go back and work. Why doesn't he do something substantive in the form of service?
Because this is what he knows best. Mitt Romney has demonstrated that he knows the private sector, is well liked by the private sector. And again, even when you look at this Quinnipiac poll results that we just talked about, the Democrats are overwhelmingly beating all of the Republican candidates, folks that are in the vein of a Mitt Romney and otherwise. So he's going to do what he knows best, true to form.
Joy, don't you think Mitt Romney's performance post-election has exposed him for who he is. You'll remember that towards the end he accused the president of selling Jeep to China, and then 10 minutes later he buys an Audi made in Slovakia, but owned by a German company.
Right.
Then he says he loves the country, wants to serve. It's the only thing. It kills him that he can't serve the nation,
Yeah.
but now he's going back into private equity.
Yeah, and just
He's a con man.
And he's odd. The oddness of this family, it just never ends. The fact that he's sort of coming out and talking when all the Republicans were like, no, please, never talk again. Why are you still here? The fact that he wants to speak at CPAC, very odd. And then going to work for your son. Like, I mean, how odd is it to give your dad a job? I find the whole thing very odd. And I don't really know what he's getting out of it. What Mitt Romney wants. Does he want a public role of some kind? I'm not sure. And going back and working for private equity, which is not the most popular for business, doesn't seem to be a way to get a future role for yourself publicly. So I don't even get it. I don't get the whole Romney family.
But maybe he's giving a new meaning to that phrase, you did build that.
Indeed. His son did.
Angela Ryan, Joy Reid, thank you so much. Coming up, a little more than 2 months since Sandy Hook, and the NRA could be winning the day. Stay with us.
You'll remember I told this story about how she had marched in the inauguration parade, and just a few weeks later had been gunned down about a mile away from my house. So I urge the Senate to give that bill a vote. I urge the House to follow suit, and I urge Congress to move on other areas that have support of the American people.
Mulligan, sir. Mulligan. Take a mulligan. I took something for my sinuses, but I still have this cough.
Truth is, a lot